I think it's inevitable he wins one. I feel very comfortable saying 5 years. I might say 3 years. And to get one in the next 3 years. Oregon, since he's gotten there, has gotten better every year, both from a record perspective, from a brand of football perspective. And one thing I think that we lose sight of is, winning a national championship's really freaking hard.
What's up, college football junkies? Are you ready for a fix? Well, we got it for you today on Crain and Company. Our friend PicKell from On3 is joining us once again to preview one of the most successful first-time head coaches, in college football history. That's Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. David Cohn to my left, Blaine Crain to my far right, and PicKell from On3. Come on, JD, let's go.
Welcome back, sir.
What's up, boy?
Welcome
Great to
back.
be here, man. Glad to be here with
Hands.
Yeah, there we go. Good. We're locked in. Hope you're locked in. Better hit that like and subscribe button, too. All right, fellas. Oregon. Dan Lanning got some numbers for you. Overall, 35-6. At Oregon, he's 32-4 in the regular season.
And won nothing.
Okay.
He won those games.
He won those games.
Whoa.
He had the huge win, right, over Ohio State, where they decided to put the extra guy there on defense.
Okay.
Brilliant move. But outside of that, still hadn't gotten over the hump. But you don't get over the hump until you get over the hump. So a lot of people said the same thing about Kirby Smart. Now, I know it hasn't been beautiful against Alabama, but he did climb that mountain. A lot of people are saying the same thing about Penn State. We'll see if they can climb that mountain. But this Oregon team, and JD, I want to start with you on this, because I know you talk a decent amount about Oregon. Their move up, to me, has been very line of scrimmage based. Oregon has always had the skill players, right? You get the fun uniforms, you throw it around, I know Chip Kelly took them to the national championship game where they did lose to Auburn. Michael Dyer wasn't down. But when you look at what Dan Lanning has done for this program, even though they haven't had the huge splash title win or whatever, you've got to love the trajectory of what you've seen.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that we're talking about this with a group of guys that all played ball, because you'll understand this. Your persona of your leadership becomes the persona of your football team.
Yes.
Yeah. Dan Lanning, gritty, tough, driving 20 whatever hours for his first GA job and wherever that was. I think it was in the Northeast somewhere. He's driving. That's just who Oregon is. And so that plays itself out on a football field in the trenches. And so there's that coupled with who he's worked for, and Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, those guys major in the line of scrimmage. And so we've seen that paired with what Oregon is now, and I think it's reflective.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh,
good call.
Yeah. David,
dog.
Again, it feels like every time we do a preview on one of these big brands, we've done it, for Ohio State, Alabama. There's a new quarterback that's being broken in. Dante Moore, I think, is as physically gifted from an arm talent standpoint as anybody out there. And I love that he had the balls to go to Oregon and sit behind a guy when, he could have gone and taken the easy way out and gone somewhere where he can start. He's bided his time. How much do you put into a guy with a mindset like that, matched with the overall ability and surrounded by what he's going to be surrounded by, even though Evan Stewart, unfortunately, is not going to be playing?
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, he started his college career at UCLA when Chip Kelly was still there. And remember, that year was kind of weird because UCLA was leaning on their defense a lot, playing a lot of low-scoring games because he was having to start as a true freshman, and he did some good things. He did some things not so good. You're a true freshman playing high-level college football. But the reason I bring it up is because he did get a season to learn under the tutelage of Chip Kelly, who just led the Buckeyes to a national championship as the OC and who's now with the Las Vegas Raiders. So he will bring that to the table, too. And it sounds like his headspace and his, everything mentally is going on is just right with him. At the same time, Bo Nix, man, was a heck of a quarterback. You can see him doing it in the league now. Dillon Gabriel, heck of a quarterback, drafted into the NFL. And so I just wonder, how good does the rest of the Oregon roster have to be for them to be able to have the same sort of success if Dante Moore isn't playing as well as Bo Nix and Dillon Gabriel, who are in the NFL?
I think a lot of that, to me, I grade that on a different curve because the schedule is what it is for Oregon. Like there's no Ohio State on there. And just like the only really super tough game you schedule or you circle on the schedule is at Penn State early on. And so,
Maybe
like,
at
besides
Washington
that,
late.
At Washington could be tricky, but like for me, I love all the clues with Dante Moore. I think there's a chance for Dante Moore from a pure God-given skill set to be maybe the best out of all those guys. And that's saying a lot without us actually having seen him play a full season as a starting quarterback yet in college football. So we kind of tread lightly there. But I mean, what he was as a recruit, and then also the way that Oregon has pursued this guy. He's committed at the high school level, flips to UCLA, and then decides to transfer to Oregon knowing he's not going to play for a year, sits for a year. I just think about how much you have to, as a coaching staff, be in on a dude to say, not only will we take you for a year, we'll pay you for a year to sit after you already flipped away from us. Like they've tried to get this dude in the boat multiple times. And so I think that tells me a lot with Will Stein being the coordinator and his perception of quarterbacks, the guys you just mentioned. I'm very, very high on him.
Well, Blaine, the wide receiver position, obviously, you lose Tez, who is a hell of a player. Bucky Irving is already a year out. He's already doing his thing in the league. I know he was a running back. And then Evan Stewart goes down. You say, oh, my God, Oregon's going to be deficient at wide receiver. But then you take a look out there and you look who they brought in. Number one, Malik Benson can ball. He can ball. I know Florida State was a dumpster fire last year, but he can ball. DeCorian Moore was the number one overall wide receiver in the class. He's an absolute freak show. If your name's DeCorian, I promise you can play wide receiver. And then Justice Lowe did some really, really good things last year as well. The pot is not empty out wide. When you look at this team's talent makeup, you did go to the transfer portal and get a running back. You got two offensive linemen that
I think their offensive line's going to be pretty good.
I think they're going to be pretty good. I think you got two NFL guys, obviously, out of the portal. But when you look at the skill position around Dante Moore, I mean, how do we feel like Oregon is going to be, or will this be a run first, kind of a little bit different than what we saw? Because, I mean, Tez Johnson in the bubble was an extension of the run.
Yeah, I feel like you're still going to have some guys who are going to have to step up and prove it. We got to find out about Evan Stewart's health.
Yeah.
To be honest, when is he going to be back? I think a lot of questions are going to lie with the quarterback. I'm not worried about Oregon when it comes to offense. I don't think that's what Dan Lanning's about. I think what's held back Oregon is most of the time has been their defense, and their defense
in
this
big
year,
games.
In big games, yeah. I mean, look what happened to Ohio State in the playoffs. They, ran through them like hot butter. Anything Ohio State wanted to do, they could. I think this could be one of Dan Lanning's most talented teams, but I also think it's one of the youngest teams that he's going to have. And you look on that defense side of the ball, if there's one thing you have to win a national championship in college football, is you have to have guys up front on the defensive line. I mean, go through it. Ohio State, the last 5 national championship winners. Ohio State, dogs up front on the defensive line. Michigan, dogs up front on the defensive line. Georgia twice, then Alabama. Those D lines are absolutely a problem and somewhat of the key to get you to where you want to be. So give me your assessment kind of on this defense. Talented, right? But you lost a lot, but extremely young and inexperienced. And you got Bear Alexander.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring that up too.
Yeah.
But before you answer, like, how good are they on the defensive line if Bear Alexander is coming in and he's I mean, is he going to be a surefire starter? We're talking about someone who transferred from Georgia to USC, then quit on the team at USC and was like, I don't want to play anymore throughout the season. I'm just going to transfer. How is he doing mentally?
Which I was surprised that they took him in general, just because, I mean, everything that went down with him at USC feels very counter to how Dan Lanning does things.
Exactly.
Everything I've heard out of Eugene to this point is it's like, for Oregon, they are viewing this as a, hey, make it what you want to make it, Bear. This is your shot, bro. You could go be an NFL draft pick, but it's on you to make it happen. I think they're at a certain spot. I haven't heard this, but this is how I would imagine they feel. I think they are so well put together on the roster, on the defensive side with how Dan Lanning has recruited to where they say, Bear, we'd love for you to be great. We don't need you to be great.
You're the add-on. You're the add-on. You're the
cherry on top.
The add-on to the steak.
That's fine from a talent standpoint.
Yes.
But what if there's any problems just created culturally in the locker room?
Yeah.
Then you've created a bigger problem than just you didn't come in here and ball.
Yeah. My gut there is that I think what Dan Lanning's put together there culturally is good enough to where the locker room is solid enough and healthy enough to withstand any virus as opposed to the virus infecting the locker room.
Yeah.
That's been my biggest thing with Clemson in the portal. They're talking about protecting culture and, not wanting any bad apples in the building. And I'm like, well, if your culture is what you think it is, if Oregon's culture is as good as they think it is, then it should be able to take Bear Alexander and raise him up to their level. And if he's not, then like, okay, we don't need you.
Yeah.
Get in the back seats.
Well, I mean, we've seen Nick Saban not only do that with players, but with coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, your culture is good enough. Like, to your point, I love the virus analogy. That's perfect. I mean, the linebacker room, They're going to be pretty damn good at linebacker, too, now. But Dan Lanning's teams are going to be pretty damn
Well, I want to go ahead and go through this schedule.
Yeah, let's go through it.
Because we actually going a little bit later in reviews. You got Montana State week 1. Shout out the boys. Oklahoma State, interesting game week 2. That's at home at Northwestern. Oregon State at home at Penn State. Indiana at home at Rutgers. Wisconsin at home at Iowa. Minnesota at home. USC at home. And you finish the year at Washington.
That's about as manageable as it gets.
What else
in
you
the
gonna
Big
ask
Ten.
for?
And right now, from a win total percentage, 9+ wins minus 950. So feel pretty good about that. Oregon 10+ wins minus 320. 11+ wins is plus 100. They have the best odds right now in the country out of all teams to have 11 wins.
Well, that's why you feel like you take a money line, right? They get to the 11, it's a wash. You know, you're really betting the Penn State game at this point. But I'm telling you, and I'll continue to say, and I know this isn't Washington preview, Washington's going to be a problem with that quarterback, with
Damon.
He's a freak. Not enough people are talking about him. But with that type of schedule, and with Dante Moore, we talked about how Ohio State, Texas is a great barometer for each. Montana State, I know they lost a lot. I've got a buddy that's a wide receiver coach there. They're going to be talented. You're going to get to know a little bit. But how long is it going to take for us to know? Because remember, Oregon last year against Idaho didn't exactly get started off on a great footing. But how long do you think it'll take? Go through the first 4 games that schedule.
Montana State, Oklahoma State at home, at Northwestern, and then Oregon State.
We've all heard common myths, like we only use 10% of our brains, or Blaine's really 6'4". But here's one that might surprise you. Thread count is a huge myth that many people believe when shopping for sheets. Thread count is simply a measure of fabric density and isn't actually a good indicator of quality. If you want truly great sheets, you need to look at thread quality, not count. That's why Boll and Branch focuses on using the highest quality organic cotton threads, creating long-lasting sheets that actually get softer over time rather than relying on inflated thread count numbers to impress customers. Now, Boll and Branch's sheets are crafted from the finest 100% organic cotton in a soft, breathable, and durable weave. That's what we call a dual thread that delivers quality you can feel from the moment that you touch them. What makes it even more special is they become softer with every wash, improving over time like a fine bottle of wine rather than wearing down. Now, with their 30-night worry-free guarantee, you can experience this exceptional comfort risk-free, ensuring you'll love how these premium sheets transform your sleep experience. We all got them. My wife has never been happier. She loves them. I love them. You sleep better. It's like jumping into a cloud. Now, get the best savings of the season during Boll and Branch's annual summer event. You get 20% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/booster. That's BOLLANDBRANCH.com/booster to save 20% and unlock free shipping. Limited time only. Exclusions apply. Check them out. They're the GOAT. I mean, are we going to know after 4 weeks? I know Oklahoma State bounces back pretty good with Gundy at some point.
No, remember last year during the first couple of weeks and Dylan Gabriel was turning the football over? We're like, man, is there an Oregon problem? You asked me verbatim, is Oregon fraudulent?
Yeah.
And then they were the only team in the country that went undefeated during the regular season. Now, the Buckeyes beat them on the first possession of the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, it was over before the TV switched over from the overtime.
Which was a bummer for someone watching the Peach Bowl, yeah.
That's why, yeah, exactly.
Dang, man.
But still, undefeated in the regular season and with a Big Ten title. So
I just wonder how long. How long?
It is kind of tells you everything you need to know about your schedule from a conference winning standpoint, right? Ohio State plus 190, Penn State plus 260, and Oregon plus 290. But they're still favored to win the best team to favor to win 11 games.
I really don't think we'll know till they go to Happy Valley, right? I mean, if I'm Dan Lanning and I could put the schedule together with where we play, I would love for that game against Oklahoma State to be in Stillwater, go to Boone Pickens. They got the paddles and get to see what your young quarterback looks like in a raucous environment. That's not going to be the world we live in, but still, I don't think we know till at Penn State. And even then, how many times have we seen quarterbacks early on in the season have a great failure or a great triumph, but then we get to October, early November, we're like, actually, maybe Miller Moss isn't the right guy at USC. Actually, maybe Garrett Nussmeier, what we saw week 1 against USC, he's actually going to be pretty good.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's what makes the great teams get better over time. I want to get back to something we talked about earlier, and that is Dan Lanning has done an incredible job of beating the teams that he's supposed to beat. Mm-hmm. And that's fantastic. You could say the same thing about James Franklin, right? And some other guys. Brian Kelly at LSU. I know the sample size with Dan Lanning as a head coach is not nearly as vast as what we have with James Franklin and Brian Kelly. But why do we think, I want to start with you, Dave, and then I want to go to JD, and then I want to go to Blaine. Why do we think, and I know, again, Oregon did beat Ohio State in the regular season last year, but why do we think they haven't been able to get over that hump at this point, now that he has had cycles of recruiting?
Well, it's just the opportunities, right? Like at some point, Kirby Smart got those opportunities and finally was able to get over the hump. And I just remember when we were doing the J-Boy show in the College Football Hall of Fame and that SEC championship game came up in 2021, and we said, I've got to take Alabama because I haven't seen Kirby do it. And what happened? Alabama beat him again. And we're like, see? Then they get a rematch in the national championship, and what happens? Georgia wins that first national championship in 40 years. Then he goes back-to-back and does it again. I think Steve Sarkisian and Dan Lanning and all these guys, especially in a post-Nick Saban era, the more opportunities they get, they're going to be able to take advantage of. I think the job that he's done so far in Oregon has been incredible. And you saw when Steve Sarkisian got to Texas, he's pulling his hair out saying, man, I can't believe how much I've had to change culturally before I can even get the right guys in, right? Well, he's done that, and he's made back-to-back college football playoffs. So all these guys know, and James Franklin's a part of this too, they know you knock on the door so long, eventually you have to walk through it and take advantage of those opportunities. And that's one of the things in the Big Ten that's interesting is I just wonder if we're going to have to come down to a tie-break scenario with some of this stuff, because we're talking about the schedule here. Oregon goes to Penn State, but the rest is pretty manageable. Penn State goes to Columbus, right? Columbus goes to Michigan, and that's all without even talking about Illinois being in the mix, which I think they're going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, culturally, Oregon went from, nose rings and blue hair to chewing tobacco and cowboy hats with Dan Lanning, which, I think helps out more in football. But JD, is there something you can point your finger on, or is it just the math? Like you haven't got enough opportunities to finally break through that wall, or maybe caught the breaks in one of the few opportunities that you have?
I think one thing that gets overlooked is the fact that Oregon, since he's gotten there, has gotten better every year, both from a record perspective, from a brand of football perspective. And one thing I think that we lose sight of right now in modern college football is, like, winning a national championship's really freaking hard.
Yeah.
And it's only getting harder with the expanded playoff. And, like, we're all wired to, but Saban reeled off a bunch, Dabo won a couple, and it's like, yeah, but, Kirby won a couple.
Urban Meyer.
But it's like, it took Kirby 6 years. It took Ryan Day 6 years. It took Jim Harbaugh 9 years.
And those are two examples I'm glad you brought up, because that's what I was going to say, too, is like Ryan Day was on the hot seat. Like talking about winning percentage, his is the best in the country. On the hot seat, he's the defending national champion. Everyone was asking me, everyone in the country, every Michigan fan, should Michigan move on from Jim Harbaugh around the COVID era? Couldn't beat Urban Meyer, could not beat this man. And what does he do? Reels off 3 college football playoff appearances in a row, wins the national championship, 3 Big Ten titles in a row. He goes to the NFL, a Michigan hero.
Yeah.
It's
amazing how quick it can change. Blaine, it's just a matter of time.
Well, this might be crazy for me to say because of who Dan Lanning is. I think the defense has let them down in the biggest games.
Well, the numbers.
You won the Big Ten. Congratulations. Penn State dropped 37 on you. You're against college football playoff opponents. They're averaging giving up 35 points on defense. And if you want to win against top 10 teams, college football playoff teams, Dan Lanning, you're a defensive guy. That's when your defense has to be the difference. Because when it comes to offense, I think Oregon, from an offensive standpoint, I can't remember when they weren't good.
Yeah.
Right, on offense. And it's not just about the uniforms. Whoa, we have this, we have all these facilities. Dan Lanning brings a grittiness to Oregon, and that grittiness needs to show up on the defensive side of the ball when you play the best. Because offenses can take you far, but what wins you championships? That is defense.
God, please, let's just remember he said that when we're halfway through the season. And
that's fact. I'm not talking about regular season football games, right? I'm talking about top 10 opponents, the best versus the best. The defense for Oregon has let them down.
Well, a great example of that, to your point about defense, we just saw that in college baseball. What won the national championship for LSU?
Pitching.
Cade Anderson going out there and shoving for 9 innings. You win a 1-0 game.
Yeah.
Then you win a 5-3 game because Ianson goes out there and gives you 7 strong. I think you're exactly right. And I want to make sure to the Oregon fans, I'm not downplaying the Big Ten title, right? That's a great feat
for sure
for Oregon. So it's not like he doesn't have any
year one in the conference
like that. Yeah, first time in the conference. That's a very, very big deal. But I know Oregon fans, they want that national championship game to because again, guys, You know how many national championships Oregon's won?
0.
Zero.
And Phil Knight said he wants to see one before he dies.
For sure.
so.
Which is
Remember- and
crazy
just remember
to me.
the other playoff team Oregon played last year. Right, that was Boise State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that game.
Who dropped 34 on
Close
us.
Yeah,
one.
that's a good call. That's a good call. Now Ashton Jeanty was an absolute freak,
He's a
but,
big problem.
but that did happen.
Draft him in your fantasy draft.
But any other anecdotes on Oregon? Any other?
Is it 11-1?
It just I feel like
11?
that
I
is
want
the-
Dan to win one, man.
I do.
want Dan.
I love Dan Lanning. I think he's fantastic.
I think it's inevitable he wins one. I'm trying to think of what timeline I want to put on this. Feel very comfortable saying 5 years. I might say 3 years. I think they get one in the next 3 years.
Okay.
This year, though.
Yeah.
This year, do they win it all?
If there's ever a year to do it, you don't got that other than like Nussmeier. I mean, you got Cade and
Yeah,
those
yeah.
guys, but like that there's not that team out there that are looking like, damn, they're better.
Well, does the straight seeding help Oregon?
Didn't last year.
Well, we didn't have straight seeding.
Oh, not
last
straight
year.
seeding. I'm just talking about seeding in general.
Like because
I think it
now,
has to, right?
because I mean, to be honest with you, they screwed Oregon like as the number 1 overall seed. That
Brutal.
sucks.
Played Ohio State.
That you had to play like again. We that's why I love the straight seeding.
Yeah.
Because it's going to play out the closest to the way it could play out. Now teams could be playing better at the end. Somebody could show up and just like we see in basketball, hit more 3-pointers than they have any part of the season. But is Oregon one of the biggest beneficiaries of straight seeding?
I think they have to be. I think they absolutely have to be. Also, I'd be surprised if, let's just say we didn't go straight seeding and they went and had the same year they had this past year to next year and they, have a first round bye, whatever. I would be wildly surprised if we saw Oregon roll out there the way they rolled out there against Ohio
100%.
State. Because I think Dan Lanning's one of the best adapters in the sport, too.
Yeah.
I think he's a great adapter. I think they would adapt what they do on a week-to-week basis leading into that game. I think they would change their recovery, all that. I think it would be totally restructured, which is easy to say after you get your break speed in the Rose Bowl. But I think the way that he's adapted from every single year he's been at Oregon, I'd be wildly surprised if he didn't this upcoming season.
Oh man, I can't wait to see it. I want to see Dante Moore with this time. We want to know in the comments. Tell us, what do you think Oregon's record's going to be this year? Will they get over 11 wins? And will Dan Lanning win a national title within the next 3 years, like our boy JD thinks over here? Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Keep sharing the show. JD, as usual, buddy.
Appreciate
Great
y'all,
stuff.
man.
You're the
Appreciate
man. Great to
y'all.
see
I
ya.
know.
Again, we appreciate you being here. Remember, without you, there is no us. And like the chances, my buddy, the wide receiver coach at Montana State's team, not starting out 0-1 this year.
You're due for a
Go and
drop.
go.
I believe
love you,
you're due
Mixie.
for a drop. I believe
love
You're
you.
due for a drop.
Oh, yeah. Gone and
I'd lock-
go gadget
I'd lock
on
you.
you, boy.